Hello everyone and welcome to RadioTimes.com's look ahead to this weekend's BAFTA TV Awards. I'm David Craig, Senior Drama Writer at RadioTimes.com.
And I'm James Hibbs, Drama Writer at RadioTimes.com.
And we're going to be going over some of the main categories and our favourite contenders within them. So let's get started with the drama series category. James, what have you got your eye on here?
Now, if I was picking purely based on what I enjoyed, I think Bad Sisters would be a shoo-in. I thought it was such a great sort of comedy drama series. You know, it really managed those tones between obviously the very dark subject matter it's dealing with these four sisters trying to kill the other sister's husband. But it was done so well in terms of the comedy as well. I just thought it was an absolute knockout. But if I was to say what will win, I think it will probably go towards The Responder.
Well, The Responder is a personal favourite of mine, and it really took me by surprise because I'm so bored of police dramas. I hate them. I just hate them normally. And when this came along, I was like, okay, you know, this is going to be more of the same. But actually, it completely stunned me, blew me away. I think obviously the screenwriter Tony Schumacher actually used to be a police officer, so although the story is fictional, there are certain elements of the show which are kind of drawn from reality. And I thought Martin Freeman's performance in the lead role, as we'll get onto in a minute, was also just really fantastic. So I would be very happy to see The Responder take home the prize. But let's get on to the acting nominees. So for male performance in a drama, who do you think is a front runner?
Yeah, it's really difficult, isn't it? Because this is an absolutely stacked category. You've got some massive names in there. You've got Cillian Murphy up for his first ever TV BAFTA, which is incredible that it's the first time he's been nominated in this category. He's up for the final season of Peaky Blinders, obviously a massive show, went down really well. He could be up there. You've also got Gary Oldman for Slow Horses, his first nomination as well. It's an incredible performance. I think because it's leaning on the sort of more comedic side at times, maybe that will knock him back, unfortunately. I don't think that should be the case, but I think it might do. But for me, my personal preference would probably be Ben Whishaw in This Is Going to Hurt. I thought that was such a stunning performance. It was such a stunning show all round. Really heartfelt. I think it's got that incredible message at the centre of it about the NHS. I just think it's a very, very good potential of winning there. So what about you?
Well, as I just mentioned, Martin Freeman, obviously fantastic in The Responder. Who knew he could do such a brilliant Scouse accent? I mean, you know, and it was just such an against-type performance from him. You know, it's not the kind of character that we're used to seeing in play. On that note, I think you could say the same about Taron Egerton. You know, this is an actor who came up playing kind of plucky underdog characters. Obviously, you had Kingsman, Eddie the Eagle, and most recently Elton John in the Rocket Man biopic. And here he plays a really kind of fearsome, formidable, intimidating kind of drug kingpin thrown into an incredibly dark situation. And he absolutely nailed it. I mean, it was fantastic. So I would be very happy to see any of them. I mean, it's just such a great category. I'd be happy to see any of these nominees go home with the award.
100%, yeah. But what about the leading actress category? Who have you got your eye on there?
Well, it's another difficult one to call. Obviously, Sarah Lancashire has recently been, you know, gripping the nation on Happy Valley. Here she's actually nominated for a different show. She's nominated for her Julia Child biopic, which I feel like may have flown a little bit under the radar over here, partly because Julia Child just isn't as famous a personality as she is in the United States. But, you know, I actually watched this show, again, one that I was very skeptical of when I started. And it took me a little while to sort of warm to it because it is very kind of cutesy and wholesome, and I thought, oh, is this a little bit twee? But actually, over the course of the season, I kind of fell in love with it. It was exactly the kind of wholesome programming that I needed, because at the time I was actually in lockdown with COVID-19, so I just needed something nice to pick up my spirits. And Sarah Lancashire really disappears into this larger-than-life role. So, you know, I would love to see her take it for this. I think it would be a bit of recognition for maybe something that's flown under the radar. But what about you, James? What do you think?
Well, in terms of who might win, I certainly don't think you can count out Imelda Staunton for The Crown. I think, you know, that's such a beloved show. The latest season, obviously a little bit more controversy there. But regardless, I think you know, with someone of Imelda Staunton's caliber, I do think that she could be in with a shot there. However, for my money, I would go for Kate Winslet in I Am Ruth, which was such a stirring drama. It was so heartfelt, so moving, but devastating, really, really devastating. And the fact that you learn that a lot of that was entirely improvised. You know, the dialogue wasn't written down before they went into those scenes, and they were often shooting for, you know, for hours at a time. It's absolutely incredible, and I think for that alone, she deserves a nomination, but for the performance which came out of that, I think she deserves the win.
That's a very good point, to be fair. Improvisation, mind-blowing. But let's move on to comedy now, another really strong category. Are there any sitcoms that have, you know, really caught your eye here?
Yeah, well, I think for me, I think Big Boys was a really strong debut from Jack Rook, known for his work on the comedy scene, you know, the stand-up comedy scene, but here with his first sitcom. And I think, you know, both Dylan Llewellyn and John Pointing really strong in the lead roles in that series. It was kind of a throwback to sort of more classic Channel 4 comedies, but it also had that sort of modern feel to it, and it was dealing with some, you know, important issues around, you know, coming out and all of these sorts of things. I think it's a really strong option. Yeah. What about you?
Well, I think my eye immediately goes to Ghosts. I think it's just such a family favorite, such a crowd pleaser. And I think the remarkable thing about it is that the enthusiasm for the show seems to just grow with every single season. You know, a lot of shows kind of lose a bit of steam over the course of their run. But this one, people are just going increasingly mad for it. And it is yet to win a BAFTA, which also seems really, really crazy. So this could be the year. However, I do think what might go against Ghosts is that Ghost actually has one more season left to go, whereas Derry Girls obviously wrapped up this past year and on a humongous high note. I think it was a season that really spoke to a lot of people, sensitively handled matters like the Good Friday Agreement and the impact that that had on Northern Ireland. So I think that could also just sweep in and take it.
Yeah, I think it's definitely the one to beat in terms of the conversation around that series. You know, you don't get much bigger than the final season of that show.
And the two comedy performance categories also very competitive. Who are your top choices for male performers in a comedy?
Yeah, it's again a really crowded field, but for me, you can never ever discount Matt Berry. I think he's, no matter what he's saying, it's always funny. The line doesn't have to be funny, but just his delivery will always make it funny. So his performance in What We Do in the Shadows, I mean, don't get me wrong, that as the series has gone on, it's just become more and more ridiculous, I think, but it's still so much fun. And I think his performance really, really shines in that show. So I think he could be a contender. You've also got Lenny Rush. I think, you know, a lot of people didn't know who he was. He'd been in a few bits and bobs before this, but obviously he's such a young actor. But then to come out of Am I Being Unreasonable, you know, a show which also had Daisy Mae Cooper in it, and to be the name that people were probably talking about more, I think that says a lot about this performance. And also, he wasn't just dealing with sort of the comedy here. You know, there were lots of darker edges to this show. It was sort of a thriller / comedy. And he really took on the thriller elements and made his character a really unknowable character to watch. You didn't know what he was going to do next. So, yeah, for sure, I would say he could well take it home. But what about you?
Well, one of the names that stands out to me is Stephen Merchant, of course, just an absolute titan in British comedy. I have to say, I feel that The Outlaws Season 2 was a considerable downgrade on the first season, which I loved. But Stephen Merchant was still very much a high point, and of course he's one of the main writers behind the show as well. So I think I wouldn't be surprised if BAFTA wanted to show him some recognition, especially because that show, again, is sort of a merging of genres at time and something very different to what Merchant has done before. But what about for female performance in a comedy? What do you reckon, James? Who's standing out to you?
Yeah, well, there's a few names in this category who have been, you know, buzzed about. I think Taj Atwell, for her role in Hull Raisers, could well take it. Equally, Obviously, am I being unreasonable? I say Lenny Rush sort of took it away from Daisy May Cooper there, but she is still definitely a contender. I mean, personally for me, that show worked better as a thriller than it did as a comedy. I thought that Lenny Rush was great doing both, but Daisy May Cooper, at times, I don't know, I wasn't 100% sure, and that's despite having loved her in so many other shows, but I just wasn't quite sure about this performance. But I would certainly think that she would be on the top of BAFTA voters' minds, given how much they seem to love this show.
Absolutely. Well, I am a huge Diane Morgan fan, going all the way back to the early Charlie Brooker days of Screen Wipe and News Wipe, where, you know, it's easy to forget that she's been playing this role of Philomena Kunk for probably about, I don't know, 15 years now, something like that. And, you know, the character has, again, just grown in popularity, has become kind of a bit of a phenomenon. And I think there's something about Diane Morgan's just incredible sort of deadpan delivery. I just think no one else could play that role as good as her. And it would be great to see her get some recognition for it. But as we've already discussed, Derry Girls is a titan in the British comedy genre. And of course, Siobhan McSweeney is also up in this category. And I think it could be quite hard to come out on top.
Yeah, I think so, definitely. So the last category we should mention is, of course, the memorable moment category, which is a little bit different because there's votes by the public taken into account here. So what do you think could potentially win out in this category?
Well, I think it is going to be a little bit tough, particularly because, you know, the UK has been very obsessed with the royal family recently with the coronation, and one of the must-see moments up is Queen Elizabeth II's little lunchtime encounter with Paddington Bear, which was very adorable and did get a huge reaction on social media when it happened last summer. So I think that could be quite a hard one to beat. But that being said, I absolutely loved Stranger Things 4. I thought it was the best season of the show to date. And so if I was in control of this category, I would probably give it to the scene of Max escaping Vecna, set to the soundtrack of Kate Bush's Running Up That Hill. It was so emotionally charged. I watched the clip several times after watching the episode when it was uploaded to YouTube, and I just felt like I was going to cry every single time. You know, there's just so much emotional weight behind it. And it's also just incredibly cinematic. When Vecna's like throwing all this stuff and she's running in slow motion, I mean, it was just like, it was cinema. It was cinema.
And it propelled that song back up into the charts. So that would suggest
Exactly.
It's got a wave of public support behind it. So maybe it could clinch it, yeah.
Is there anything else in this category that you think might be in with a shot?
I don't know how much of a shot it's in with, but we've got to mention The Traitors. That final roundtable scene was so incredible. So many twists, so many turns. For anyone who'd been watching The Traitors up to that point, it was the ultimate climax. You couldn't have imagined it going any more dramatically than it did. So yeah, I think if reality fans are voting in force, and you know, certainly that show seems to have a groundswell of support. It's already got the season 2 coming on the way. I think that one could potentially take it. But as you say, I think Paddington is a tall order to beat.
Absolutely. Well, it's going to be an interesting night. We're excited to see who ends up winning these hotly contested categories. Thank you so much for watching our look ahead. Of course, you can find more coverage of the BAFTA TV Awards on radiotimes.com, and you can tune into the ceremony this Sunday, the 14th of May at 7 p.m. on BBC One. So until next time, thanks for watching.